Welcome to organizational development. Today we will talk about some of the basic definitions and elements of OD that you will be reflecting upon in the weeks and days to come for this course. So when we're talking about organization development, keep in mind that organizational development is both a professional field of social action as well as an area of scientific inquiry. Definitions of OD or organization development generally include a number of common attributes having to do with the targets and process of plan change, the values and knowledge which underlie it, as well as the intended organizational outcomes that managers and organizational executives want to achieve. Slight variations in the definitions of organization development do exist with varying degrees of emphasis on different topics, depending on which author you might be looking at or which author is actually defining it. According to Burke's definition, OD is a planned process of change in an organization's culture through the utilization of behavioral science technology, research, as well as theory. And according to Becker's definition, OD is an effort, planned, organization-wide, and managed from the top to increase the firm or organization's overall effectiveness in health through planned interventions in the organization's processes using behavioral science knowledge and obviously techniques. Let us look at the view of Daft. Richard Daft says organization development focuses on human and social aspects of the organization to improve their ability to adapt and solve day-to-day problems. Today, the concept has been somewhat enlarged to examine how people in groups can change to an adaptive culture in a complex and somewhat turbulent environment. OD is a process of fundamental change in the human and social systems of any organization, which includes obviously organizational cultures. Going back to Cummings and Worley, they emphasize that OD is system-wide behavioral science and focuses on organizations' overall effectiveness. So OD applies to changes in the strategy, in the structure, or in the process of the entire system throughout the organization. OD is based on the application as well as the transfer of behavioral science knowledge and practice. And OD aims to improve organization effectiveness by managing plan changes, which can involve the design and implementation as well as subsequent reinforcement of that change on an ongoing basis to make sure it becomes institutionalized throughout the firm. Although OD has grown and matured by adding content issues, it is still known mostly for its attention to the process of change. The O in organization development is about organizations being complex systems of all kinds. The units throughout the society that are human organizations existing to accomplish some purpose that it was intended for at the beginning when the organization was initially created. And the D here is about developing, changing, and improving. It's about growing towards something, getting better at one's mission, improving at how work gets done and how people actually live their lives every single day. So when it comes to organization development, again, think about the O and also the D part. The O about organization being a complex system that could be very, very different from day to day, from place to place. And the D about constantly developing and growing. I would like to recommend that you remember the DQA Square Model. So as an organization development consultant and professional, you should be able to diagnose the root causes of problems, the challenges that people face, and the opportunities that the organization might have based on relevant facts at a given time. Then you should be able to design and develop relevant strategies and complementary programs to mitigate existing problems or coming problems that they might face and capitalize on opportunities that might exist based on scientific data. Third, you should be able to deliver a well-designed program through effective implementation and application by being this OD consultant. And number four, you should be able to assess your progress based on the original goals and current facts. So again, you want to look at your progress based on the original intended goals and how are you basically doing in terms of being aligned with that, or have you moved away to maybe other goals that might have come along the way. And finally, as OD consultant, you should be able to adjust as needed and document the learning points for future improvements or next time when you have to deal with the same situation or same improvement opportunities. In terms of a conceptual framework for organization development, you can have individual perspective, you can have group perspective, or you can have a system perspective. When it comes to individual perspective, think about the motivation of employees or even teams. Think about individuals being highly satisfied with their jobs and highly engaged with their jobs. If they are, they're likely to be more productive and stay with the organization. If they're not satisfied and they're bored or disengaged, obviously employee turnover will be high. And also, what is it that the organization is doing to reinforce good behavior toward organizational goals? From a group perspective, what are the group norms and values? Are people being civil with each other? Are they being respectful to each other? What kind of values are they adhering to as group members in the organization? Are teams learning on an ongoing basis or not? Are the group processes working toward the achievement of the organization's goals or not? From a systems perspective, think about participative consensus management. Are managers engaging groups and teams in the decision making? What about interdepartmental relationships? Is there too much conflict? Is there too much incivility among departments? And what about employee organization contracts? Do we have psychological safety within the organization? Are there formal and informal contracts that are well understood from the perspective of the organization as well as groups and individuals? Ultimately, as OD consultant, you're basically trying to determine the causes of effectiveness or the root causes. So again, you'll be dealing with individuals, their ability, their skill, knowledge, attitude, motivation, and level of stress that they deal with on a day-to-day basis, as well as assessing certain root causes of effectiveness at the group level. Are they being cohesive in working with each other? Who's leading? Are they leading themselves, or do they need to be led by one domineering individual or one domineering manager? How is the structure designed? What about the status and roles and norms? Are they well understood? And if they are well understood, is it leading to cohesion within the group and high performance, or is it deterring them from reaching their goals? And how about overall organization structure, the environment, the technologies being used, the strategic choices, the structure, the processes, and the culture? Is it helping individuals and groups reach their goals, or is it deterring them from reaching high performance? So OD practitioners work in a systematic or methodical manner to improve the effectiveness of people in organizations. Now, it's not obviously a step-by-step process, but obviously there is some methodology to achieving the ultimate improvement or growth that is desired. So there are several steps that you could look at in terms of what organization development work requires. First, you establish relationships with key personnel in the organization. Second, you research and evaluate various systems in the organization to understand dysfunctions and or goals of the systems in the organization. Third, you identify strategies or intervention techniques or interventions that might be needed to improve effectiveness of the organization and obviously individuals and groups. 4, you apply relevant strategies, interventions, or techniques to improve the effectiveness of the organization's resources and people's effort. So these are the methods of planned change in the organization as agreed upon and supported by not just the employees and managers, but senior executives in the organization as well. And finally, you evaluate, you assess, and you adjust as needed to make sure the organization achieves high performance or its intended goals. In terms of organization development history, if we look at it, it's really less than a century old. So you can make a name for yourself in this narrow or small field that is less than 80 years old. So when you look at the literature, actually in the history of what has been written about OD, you can go back to 1940s and 1950s and see some literature being written during those decades. In the decade of 1970s, the field of OD evolved as a separate field that applied to behavioral sciences in a profession of planned organization-wide change. And the goal here was to increase the company or the firm's overall effectiveness. In today's complex and turbulent environment, the concept of OD has actually expanded a little bit to examine how employees and groups can change and adapt based on the changing and dynamic work environment and competitiveness that exists in the industry, and also so the organization can be sustainable over time. OD is not necessarily a step-by-step procedure to solve a specific problem, but rather a process of fundamental change in the human and social systems of the organization, which can include organizational culture. So keep in mind that, there's not always going to be one prescriptive step-by-step process that applies to all changes or all growth or all development, but rather the process might be very dynamic, and it will require you to include employees, groups, senior executives in the organization, and obviously you as a coach become a partner with them in terms of achieving the organization's planned changes or goals. OD uses knowledge and techniques from the behavior sciences to create a learning environment through increased trust, open confrontation of problems, employee empowerment and participation, knowledge and information sharing, the design of meaningful work, cooperation and collaboration between groups, and full use of human potential. So these are the various elements that you as an organization consultant would be obviously integrating as part of your planned improvement process or consultancy with the organization. OD is about how organizations and people function, in how to help them function efficiently and productively. Experts have mentioned a starting point, a focus, and also an action orientation. So in other words, the 3 different stages. The starting point basically means when the leader sees an opportunity or identifies an undesirable situation and seeks to change it. A problem is found and obviously something needs to be done. If you don't do anything, the problem only gets bigger and bigger until somebody else comes along and removes you from the position, and thereby obviously you get terminated. So that's not what you want. The focus part means think of making organizations function better, the total system organization. In other words, we're looking at the interdependencies of different parts within the organization. And the action orientation basically means achieving results through planned activities using science, data, and evidence-based decision-making every step of the way. So OD is an organization improvement strategy that you, employees, managers, and senior executives can use to bring about desired changes or to survive in a very turbulent and complex environment that is very competitive. And obviously competitors can be coming from all over the globe competing with you in your neighborhoods. So when it comes to the starting point, there are certain warning signs that experts have recommended. For example, poor alignment with the organization's strategy, productivity is decreasing, quality is suffering, morale is really, really bad. There are inappropriate organizational structures, unclear goals, there are conflicts between individuals and groups and departments. There are very, very inappropriate leadership styles that are driving good people to go to the competition. There are poor team performances and poorly designed tasks and many other warning signs. So for example, if your company is getting a lot of lawsuits, that basically means there are too many discriminatory practices, perhaps, when it comes to gender, when it comes to age discrimination, when it comes to ethnicity, culture, religion, or other protected categories. If there are a lot of sexual harassment lawsuits, it basically means you have to intervene because the culture exists. It is only going to encourage more of the same unless you intervene and prevent these inappropriate actions from taking place to other employees in the coming days, weeks, and months. So organization development basically helps you remove some of these warning signs and make the organization better or take advantage of opportunities that might exist. When it comes to a focus orientation, here you ask the question, what needs to be changed and how do we go about achieving this desired change? So you identify the change by looking at the new state of being or new way that the culture should exist and how is that different from the way things are now. Keep in mind that change can be viewed as an opportunity or as a threat. If you don't change, your organization goes bankrupt, you all lose your job. That is a threat. Or it can be an opportunity to compete and obviously to grow. You can have first order change, making moderate adjustments to the way things are being done right now, or you can have second order change. This is where you have to reinvent, re-engineer, rewrite the entire organization structure in order to survive or take a leap of faith and move into the higher rank of your industry by being third, second, or first in the leadership position. So organizational consultants are experts in organizational change. And this is something you need to practice every single day because change is part of life. And we will talk about more of these change management tools in the days and weeks to come. When it comes to the DQA Square Model, remember it's about diagnosing, developing, delivering, and acting, assessing, and adjusting. So the process is known as action research. Here you need the participation and engagement of all employees, managers, and executives, and sometimes suppliers and customers as well. OD consultants need to work as partners, as collaborators, as learners, as coaches to help guide the process. And also keep in mind it's a dynamic, iterative process of diagnosing and acting. So remember the PDCA model. So you plan, you do, you check, you act, and make improvements on the cycle on a regular basis. Change occurs based on the actions taken. Change occurs based on the actions that you take. New knowledge comes from assessing and examining the results of the actions that you take every single day, every single week, every single year toward planned goals. If you didn't get good results, obviously you should not continue doing the same things. You need to change part of it or maybe all of it by taking different actions. So OD is an application of behavioral science. In organizational development, you can have pure basic science to generate knowledge using data, empirical studies, and hopefully you can then apply those into the workplace. So you become consumer of empirical or academic research or knowledge by using that knowledge to solve practical problems on a day-to-day basis in the workplace. So ultimately, we can say that OD is a practical theory. We need to practice it. You can begin by diagnosing the situation, then selecting and implementing treatments based on diagnosis, And finally, by assessing and evaluating the effects of the treatments to make relevant adjustments in order for you to bring about the desired changes in the organization or to solve that specific problem that you're targeting. Ultimately, we need to keep in mind that as OT consultants, we need to have a systems perspective. The systems approach to management is based on the general system theory, the theory that to understand an operation of an entity, the entity should be viewed as a holistic or an all-inclusive system. So a systems approach requires understanding the interdependence of its parts. A systems view enables OD consultants and professionals and managers to describe the behavior of organizations from the beginning through the end. In other words, you can see the inputs that are going into getting the job done, the implementation or the work in process part, as well as the outputs. All of this happening in a certain or specific environment where you can assess internal strengths as well as external strengths, as well as the weaknesses that might be present. The three basic components of OD programs are diagnosis, actions, and program management. Diagnosis basically means continuous collection of data about total systems, its subunits, its processes, and the overall culture of the organization. Action means all activities and interventions that are designed to improve the organization's overall functioning. And program management is about those functions and structures that are designed to ensure the success of the program. And keep in mind that the three basic components of effective OD management or consultancy are managing or coaching before the program starts, during the input stage, and during the implementation progress or the work in process stages, as well as after the program has been implemented by assessing the output or the outcomes. So just like a coach, for example, coaches the athletes before the game, then during the game, and then after the game to prepare the athlete for the next competition or next game. Ultimately, your goal is to be a very, very effective organizational consultant, either internally or externally. In summary, let me also mention that there are basically three major trends which are shaping change in organizations in the modern environment. And keep in mind that today's environment, obviously organizations seem to be very complex and dynamic. So one of those major trends happens to be globalization, which has been affecting all of us over the last 4 or 5 decades, and obviously is going to continue for the time being. The second one is information technology, which has been very useful, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic last year and this year. And obviously, a certain element of information technology will continue to be useful for all of us, whether we're working from home or from the office. And the third element that is shaping the changes in organizations in today's environment be managerial innovations. So managerial innovation, again, having a huge impact on organizational development. Under these dynamic conditions, change capability is not only crucial for an organization's success, but for survival and sustainability as well. OD plays a key role in helping modern organizations change themselves from within. It enables employees and managers to gain the skills and the knowledge needed to assess both themselves internally and to continuously improve and change the organization, align with the external conditions and forces affecting it or impacting it. So OD is highly relevant to all managers, all employees, and anyone having to work with and through others in the modern organization. Obviously, you and I are having to deal with dynamic organizations, and we always try to work through and with others, whether we're in management or not. The goal is for you to be an effective transformational leader and bring about positive changes in any organization. And as usual, obviously, do remember that organization development and change management is part of your life and my life every single day. So we need to police, evaluate, and improve our consultancy skills every single day. Good luck.